I'm Jack Scalia, and welcome to our show, Proud to Serve. We are being sponsored by the Merengoff Family Foundation. I get asked about my politics. I really don't have any. I'm an American. I stand for the national anthem. I believe in the red, white, and blue, mom's apple pie, a dog named Spot, God's guns, grits, the Bible, and our men and women in uniform who serve and protect our great nation, as well as our first responders. But hey, that's me. Proud to Serve is about people who have overcome their trials and tribulations by honoring their creation, trusting their instinct, believing in their dreams, and creating their destiny. African Americans have been serving, defending, and protecting our nation and dying for it as well, going way back to the beginning, and I'm talking about the American Revolution. Christopher Tux is acknowledged as the first African American to die at the Boston Massacre, but he is also widely regarded as the first American to fall. If you've seen the movie Glory with Denzel Washington, then you'll know about the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first all-colored Massachusetts regiment in the United States Army. He portrayed a character that was later on awarded posthumously the Medal of Honor. That guy was William H. Carney. That was followed up by another movie, and we'll stick with the movies for today since I'm from Hollywood, Pearl Harbor. Great, great cast, and in that movie, Cuba Gooding played Dory Miller, who was a mess cook who defended the USS New Jersey that he was on, and also received the Medal of Honor later on in his life. But I'm going to bring our guest in today. He spent 22 years with the United States Marines. He is the local Oceanside president of the chapter of the Montford Point Marines. And I want to introduce him today. Here he is. Mr. Hampton, please, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for your service.
You're most welcome.
So, talk to us a little about the Association of the Montford Point Marines.
All right, so the Montford Point Marine Association, first of all, there's a national organization, and the purpose of that organization is to further the legacy and the history of the Montford Point Marines. The story there is, I often tell people, because not a lot of folks are aware of who the Montford Point Marines are. Mm-hmm. And so the correlation I like to make is, I find a lot of people do know the Tuskegee Airmen.
Right.
Why? Because of the movies, the Red Tail, the HBO special. And so the Montford Point Marines are basically to the Marine Corps what the Tuskegee Airmen were to the Army Air Corps. In other words, the Montford Point Marines were the first African American Marines to serve after the services were fully integrated by President Truman. And unfortunately, at that time, the Marine Corps, even though they had to integrate, they did so somewhat begrudgingly. Mm-hmm. And so there was a location, Montford Point in North Carolina, where they sent the African American Marines to train. And kind of the thought was it would be so difficult, the conditions were so horrific that perhaps they would quit. Well, that didn't happen. So between 1942 up to 1949, almost 20,000 African American Marines went through and earned the title Marine through Montford Point Marine.
Wow.
Montford Point.
Wow. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your career.
All right.
All right. Now, you went from enlisted to commission,
yes.
affectionately called at times a Mustang.
Yes.
Do you know why they call it a Mustang?
Well, I've never really thought about that, but there's a couple of different acronyms that they've had, but it's been one that the Marine Corps had established, and so it's one that I do wear with a lot of pride and distinction.
Well, being in the United States, once a Marine, always a Marine.
There you go.
Okay, now you've been deployed twice during your 22 years of service. You were at Desert Storm 1, mm-hmm. and then you were also deployed to Somalia.
Yes.
Tell us, share a little bit about that experience with us.
So Desert Storm, that started, it was in 1989 when I first deployed to mm-hmm. Southwest Asia, or Saudi Arabia, actually. And of course, as everyone probably knows, then Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. And so the United States decided to react to that because it was deemed unacceptable. It developed into a united coalition. Mm-hmm. And so we were deployed all the way through the time that the actual war started. At the time, General Schwarzkopf was the commander for the U.S. forces, and just a brilliant strategy in that they basically had 30 days of bombing, and by the time the ground war started, the Iraqis were given up, and I think it was a historical short amount of time that the mm-hmm. war took. So that was the Desert Storm piece. As far as Somalia, that was a whole different environment because that was more of a humanitarian situation. Somalia had failed, particularly the main city or the headquarters in Mogadishu. And people were starving. It was just crazy. The warlords had established themselves, and they were hoarding food, and it became a big international humanitarian thing. So the United States put together a joint coalition to go there and primarily open up the ports and also ensure that food was distributed to those in need. I was there for about 4 months as part of that United States coalition that then transitioned over to the United Nations. And shortly before that is when I deployed back to the United States.
Right, and then after you deployed, that's when Black Hawk Down happened, and that was kind of like a snafu or maybe one FUBAR out there. But for your experience, now having been in Saudi Arabia and being involved in Desert Storm, and then going to Mogadishu, and you saw the conditions there, as a human being, as a person serving your nation, serving your country, and representing the United States Marine Corps, was there any changes that you felt, that things that you experienced that you just said, wow, and wow?
Right.
Would you share those with us?
Absolutely, and it's kind of funny you should ask that question because some of the experiences with Desert Storm, obviously it was Saudi Arabia, a very rich country, a lot of wealth, and because it also involved the Kuwaitis, there was even a time where the Kuwaitis were willing to pay literally every American involved, almost like a certain amount in retribution for them defending them. But that was shot down because we're American military, we're not mercenaries. But just the resources and things that we had for that particular situation, it was an entirely different scenario when we went to Mogadishu in Somalia. The interesting takeaway, I think, from Somalia, and I actually, while I was there, I had an opportunity to shoot a 2-hour video just capturing some of those unique things. Somalia was like almost anywhere USA. In other words, the infrastructure was like any town you'd see in the United States, street lights, that type of thing.
Really?
But during that time, anything that was infrastructure was completely devoid. There was no electricity. There was no sense of government. People were literally on their own. And I never will forget the first night that we got there, one of the things that struck me was it was absolutely pitch dark. And even though there were houses and things there, people didn't live in it because obviously with the heat and there was no air conditioning. And there were all these little hut things that they had out on the street. And I remember when we deployed through the city to get to the U.S. Embassy compound where we stayed, you would see all these little candle lights. That was the only source of light.
Really?
And when we first got there, it was kind of, hey, watch your back because you didn't know what was going to go on. Over the 4 months that I was there, I think we developed a pretty decent rapport with some of the Somalis because I had the occasion to a lot of times go out, as we would call it, outside of the wire. And one of the things I'd always do, I would always take a bag of candy. And as we would leave out, I would throw it out to the kids that were chasing our vehicles. And once they kind of got used to us, it was somewhat of a favorable type of vibe, but for whatever reason, like I said, when the United Nations took over, that just kind of transitioned over. It became negative, and the ultimate culmination of that was Black Hawk Down.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Let's talk a little bit about you being one. I was maybe the quickest going from a private to a corporal, or lance corporal, then to a corporal, then into being a sergeant. I mean, you did that in quick. I mean, you're talking like just over a year, maybe.
Yes.
How did you make that happen? Because, I've known people, my family that's in service, and it takes a while to get promotions.
Right.
So how did you manage that?
Well, the Marine Corps is probably unique in that they have what they call a meritorious promotion system. And what they say, because the Marine Corps is all about leaders and leadership. And so for those individuals that demonstrate that they're ready to move to the next rank, the Marine Corps is like, why make them wait? And so with this meritorious promotion system, if your leadership deems that maybe you have those qualities to move on to the next level, then they can put you up in essence for what they call a meritorious promotion. Now what happens is a number of individuals that are put up for that, they kind of compete, because typically there may be maybe 10 to 12 people competing at a local command for maybe one slot. And so there's a meritorious promotion board. They will judge you and based on your performance out of your service record book to see, you know, historically how you've done. They look at you in terms of how you look in uniform, how well versed you are maybe with drill, and then your command of Marine Corps history. Mm-hmm. And so it's a preparation thing. And then obviously also the confidence factor. Right. And I've just been blessed to, you know, kind of feel like I was always ready. And so I was literally, from coming out of basic training, I was meritorious promoted to PFC, several months later to Lance Corporal, several months later to Corporal. And like I said, within about a span of a year and a half, I was a E5 Sergeant. So that by the time my initial enlistment was coming to an end and was time for me to consider re-enlisting, I was already in the zone for Staff Sergeant. So needless to say, I decided to re-enlist, and the rest is history.
Right. Now, your persona, this attitude, this self-confidence, did your mom and your father have anything to do with that? Did they influence you in any way?
Absolutely. I often tell people I owe a lot of debt and gratitude to my parents and my entire family. We've always been proud individuals. I was growing up, I was always told, you know, hey, I can be anything I wanted to do. I remember as a kid, actually, I would sit in school in, I think, second or third grade, and I dreamed of actually being an astronaut.
Really?
And didn't quite pursue that, but I always had a lot of positive reinforcement. I sometimes tell people, you know, that I feel like I was blessed from the time I exited my mother's womb. My parents tell me when I was like 1 or 2 years old, I used to sit on the streets in Madera, California, where I grew up at that time, my first couple of years of my life. And they said that as cars would go by, I would name the cars.
Right.
How I did that, I don't know,
right.
But like I said, I just had a full environment of positive reinforcement that I carried forward, and I think that helped me in my career.
Oh, thank you. When you EAS'd, end of active service, mm-hmm. What was your rank at that time?
Once I actually retired from the Marine Corps, because I'd made that transition, I retired as a Chief Warrant Officer 3.
Wow,
yes.
Nice. Okay, so I think one of the things that, I know what I wanted to ask you. Where did you graduate high school?
So I graduated high school out of Plainfield High School in Indianapolis, Indiana. But having said that, I'm going to correct you because it is Christmas Attucks. And I know that because my parents actually went to Christmas Attucks High School in Indianapolis, Indiana.
All right, thank you for that. Not let me hang out there. I appreciate the correction.
You're most welcome.
Right. So now you EAS, you're out. Mm-hmm. And are you going to be looking for a job, or have you been prepping yourself once you've retired? Where are you going? What are you doing? How do you see you getting there?
So once I retired, during my military career, I'd taken some collegiate courses, and once I retired, I basically went to school full time, mm-hmm. And I was able to parlay a number of my experiences and things that I did in the military to college courses once I went to school. So when I started more or less post retirement in school, I was basically the equivalent of a junior. So it took me about 2 years to get my undergrad degree. I then went on to work for one of the major telecommunication wireless companies. Mm-hmm. Once that job, they merged, as things often happen, and I found myself then once again seeking employment. I said, well, let me go back to school and maybe do a little bit more. So I went back, picked up a MBA with an emphasis in information technology, went to work for, if I'm permitted to say, LA Fitness, the company that, mm-hmm. And I was IT support director there. I had individuals throughout the United States and parts of Canada that I managed. And then once they made some changes, I decided to kind of just go out on my own. And I found a niche with my IT background for small businesses and nonprofits. And so with that, that's kind of what I did until just a couple years ago when I decided to go back into the workforce and joined the company that I'm with now.
Yeah, no, thank you. The nonprofit, talk about some of the nonprofits you're working with, because
Okay.
this is kind of, it's almost, to me, it's indicative of a person who has dedicated his life to service for country and done it at a very high level. And you still have this desire to learn, to gain more knowledge, and to contribute, and to keep giving, either to give or to give back, or just to say, here's what I've got, you can have it if you want it. And that's a great quality in a person as far as I'm concerned. So where did that take you? Now you said, okay, I'm going to invest myself in these places here.
Okay, so two things I will say there. First of all, I would say, as I shared with someone earlier, I've never been able to master the word no. So a lot of times when people would ask me, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be more than happy to do things. And then there's a principle from the Bible that says, to much whom is given, much is required. So with that, I've just gotten involved with several organizations and tried to particularly parlay maybe the talents I have with information technology or the experiences I've had in corporate America and or the military to help benefit those organizations. Some of the organizations are the Armed Forces Communications Electronics Association, the North San Diego County NAACP, of course the Montford Point Marine Association, where I'm president of that local chapter, the Cal State University San Marcos, I'm on the President's Council out there, the National Naval Officers Association,
Which you're very proud of.
Yes, because
That's an elite group, no?
yes. Well, and the whole intent there is to mentor those young officers that are coming in, whether they be because it is sea services, so whether they be Coast Guard, Navy, or Marine Corps, and once again, having seen what it takes to be a Marine Corps officer. I just feel that I can help contribute maybe to the success of their career early on, because it's so critical if they aspire to stick around. And let's see, what else? I'm also involved with KOCT, chairman of the board.
Right.
So,
Okay. Great.
So
Yeah. From when you were in and when you served, I know Marines, always a Marine. My dad
Yes.
was a Marine. The Marines run in my family, as well as Navy. And then there's that friendly competition, the Navy and the Marines,
Yes.
and the Marines. They say Navy say you're a part of our division. You're a division of the Marines. They go, yes, the men's department. So, just kidding, Dad.
well, there's another one now. We say that the Navy is the best Uber driver we've ever had. So.
Thank you. I'm going to use that one if I have your permission.
Sure.
Okay, so with when you were serving and you were there, and you retired in
1996.
96, and you're still around Marines, you're still around the Navy. Do you see any differences? Do you see the level, the quality, the teachings?
Right. Having been there, it's sometimes tough to admit that there's individuals that truly take it to the next level. But what I see with particularly the young Marines and the Navy, because they're engaged as well, is that these individuals, they're just totally remarkable. I know I try and stay involved or engaged through some of the organizations I work with. And when I see some of the equipment and some of the things that they have to master in order to go to perhaps to the modern battlefield, it's just overwhelming. I've also said that, because of how the dynamics have changed as to how warfare is, and particularly in this environment to where we've got individuals now who, let's say with the Iraqi war of Afghanistan, have deployed 4, 5, 6 times, literally.
Right.
I have a whole lot of admiration for those individuals. And so I guess as a retiree, I would say that I'm comfortable in knowing that our services are in great hands.
Wow, thank you very much for sharing that, and I'm sure you helped pave the way for them to be where they are today.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Hampton, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you,
service.
sir.
Thank you for being here on the show with us. It was a great pleasure. We're going to have you back again.
All right, sir. Thank you for what you do. This is great.
It's a pleasure. Honored. You've been watching Proud to Serve, presented by the Stephen Meregoff Family Foundation. And as always, God, family, country. Godspeed you all.
It was the best of best of times.